Hello, hello. Welcome once again. Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different than we've been doing. Past couple of streams we've been working on more physical, creative crafts. We've been making these little model kits, both of them through Row Life. Uh, but we're going to switch things up a little bit today, and we're going to work on something a little bit more digital today. My plan is to keep Tuesdays to physical craft days and keep Thursdays to things that are a little bit more digital, maybe a little bit less hands-on and a little bit more, I guess we could say creative. So today we're actually going to be working on a project that I have been working on for quite a while, and we are going to sort of introduce this project to you guys, and then also explain what it is and uh, make a little bit of music today. So, this project that I've been working on, those of you who know me, I'm a diehard Vocaloid fan, have been for Lord knows over a decade by now. Uh, and one thing recently that I was lucky enough to do was to get a new car. And with a new car, the thought of customizing this car to some kind of theme was something I thought that would be really neat. So the theme that I ultimately decided on was to make my car Hatsune Miku themed. Because, why not? I've reached a point in my life where I've realized that I am too old to care about what others think, and to the point that I really shouldn't be afraid of, being what I'm into. And so it's been a fun little project. I've made some different changes to my car. And it's definitely something that I've had not only a lot of fun with, but something that I'm really proud of. And one particular aspect of that project that I've had just an absolute blast doing, because it combines not only, my love for being hands-on and crafty and just me customizing this car of mine, is what I like to call the Melody Box Project. So, the Melody Box Project is pretty simple. There are a couple of different manufacturers out there that make different devices that when you start your car, it basically plays a little jingle, kind of like your car normally does, but a little bit more customizable. I believe Waifu Prison has one. There's one by Import Bible, and there's at least a couple of others. And so this project is one that I kind of had in mind before I even got the car. One that I thought about maybe doing with my previous one, but now, starting with the new car, empty slate, it thought it would be really fun to try. So one of the very first things I got for my car was this. This is specifically the one by Import Bible. They have a couple of different ones. This is specifically their anime melody box variant, but they also have one called a Russia melody box. Import Bible does a lot of JDM inspired accessories for cars. And according to the guy who makes these, his inspiration for the Russia melody box, which was the one that came out first, was uh, they have these sort of automated toll devices that you have in Japan that basically just as you pass under a toll gate, it basically just automatically pulls the balance out of your like prepaid balance, and it plays this little chime. But once obviously this car is imported into other countries, the device basically stops working and no longer plays this little chime. So according to him, the Russia Melody Box was his way of bringing that functionality over to other countries. And so the Russian Melody Box specifically has a lot of very Japan flavored sounds to them. Like they have like different little jingles for different car manufacturers. They have different little jingles for like the different train lines in Japan, and it's just supposed to be like a neat little, a little chime to welcome you as you're starting your car. He later then developed this one, which, like I said, is the anime Melody Box variant. And with this one, it was just a little bit more. a little bit more themed and a little bit sillier, where it has a variety of different little melodies and voice lines from various anime. And it was a fun little idea, but the more than anything, the thing that I was looking forward to is the fact that you can actually, through the micro SD card on here, you can upload your own uh, different little jingles and stuff. And so basically, it'll play whatever's on that SD card. So if you want like a specific one, you can play, or you can completely wipe the card and just put whatever you want. You can have it shuffle through the different sounds that are on there. So this sort of was a perfect framework for this project. And so what I've done over the course of the past few months or so since I've had this melody box is I have developed a series of jingles for it, so to speak. So when the melody box is powered up through USB power, it's just powered through like a data only cable. The one it comes with is this neat little magnetic one that just sort of snaps on like that. And when it's powered up, it plays a jingle. If it's set to random, it'll pull a random one. If it's not set to random, it'll just play the last one that was played on there. You can adjust it using these little buttons or choose which one you're going to use. But it was a perfect little idea. And so what I've done was I completely wiped out the SD card. And with my car being Hatsune Miku themed, I started making little jingles or little chimes to it. Basically, my intent was to make it sound like something that your car might play, but also exactly. Uh, but basically, make it sound like something that your car would still play, but be recognizable enough that you recognize, hey, it's a song that's playing. And for those people who happen to know, maybe even recognize the song that's specifically playing. So at this point, I've developed, I want to say, about 18 of these. They're not super long. They're obviously not intended to be the full song because they're only supposed to play when the car starts up. So they range anywhere from 10 to 18 seconds. And initially, I wanted to just sort of put on the, like, very recognizable songs. But as I've kind of developed this project, I've realized that I wanted to expand it quite a bit to where you have, not just the recognizable songs, but maybe some newer stuff, maybe have some more obscure stuff or songs that maybe I am a big fan of that people don't necessarily know. And with it having that shuffle function, frankly, the more songs on it, the better. So this has been an ongoing project where over the course of the past few months, I've just been making these different chimes and continuing to expand it and continuing to develop these for it. Um, I'll show you here in a second. This right here, as soon as I can show it, I'll show you here in a moment. There's a list of them that actually shows like specifically which ones that I've developed for it. But I also have sort of, I guess you could call it a wish list of the ones that I haven't developed for it yet that I would like to. And the hope is today that we're going to hopefully get at least maybe one or two of these created so we can add them to the melody box. But this will definitely be an ongoing project, and it's something that, frankly, I see myself doing for the foreseeable future, just because, depending on the difficulty of the song, these only take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to make. And then, it's just something neat to hear that whenever I start my car or whenever I'm on my daily commute, I hear these little jingles that I've made. But either way, so we're going to get started here in just a quick moment to kind of give you an idea of the actual process of making these. So usually it's sort of a twofold process where number one obviously is actually mapping out and playing the melody itself and just kind of writing it out. And then the second part of it is truncating it or clipping it down to an appropriate length so it's not too short, but it's also not too long. There's a couple of other little things that we'll have to do to it to make it work properly with this melody box, but we'll get to that when we need to. But the two main sources that I used for making these melodies are obviously the original song itself. If it's a simple enough song, usually we can just use the original source and that's it, and then it's just a matter of transposing it. Secondarily, something I found that's super helpful is if I'm able to find piano arrangements of these particular songs, that tends to help a lot because a lot of these songs being very electronic, they don't necessarily translate well to a single instrument playing them, especially something as short in the way that this sounds. So finding piano arrangements, I'm able to find arrangements that people have made that are not just the melody, but also a good accompaniment to go with it. So usually if I reference something more than just the original song, it'll be different piano arrangements of them. But yeah, so let's go ahead. We're going to shift over for this and for pretty much any music that I work on. I do use FL Studio, so we're going to shift over super quick. So this obviously FL Studio, for those of you who are familiar, this is what I've pretty much used for all of it from this point forward. And I have this set up in a really interesting little way. So obviously with this project having a bunch of really small little components, one thing that came up was how exactly am I going to, you know, how exactly am I going to have all of these not be a bunch of different little individual projects? So what ended up happening was I basically made a single file for all of them. So as soon as this loads, so you'll notice here that those of you who are familiar with FL Studio, you have what are called patterns. These can involve a single instrument, multiple instruments, whatever. But these are basically like your little building blocks upon which you actually place on your playlist arrangement, and that's what actually makes them. That said, I don't necessarily need it to be able to make a whole playlist because I'm just making these little jingles. So what I've done is I have a base project that has all of the jingles, and each of these jingles is just an individual little pattern. The best part about that being is that once I'm done with a particular jingle, whenever I need to, I can just go to export, and I can just export that individual little pattern as its own MP3 wave, whatever I decide to export it as. And not only do I keep everything in a single project, but I'm also able to export the individual little jingles themselves. So to give you an idea of the jingles themselves, I'll start with the very first one I made, which is Melt. And I'm using Analog Lab 5. And particularly, I'm using their Vibes 2 preset, which is sort of like a vibraphone sounding preset. It has like that sort of bell effect that I'm looking for with chimes, but it's also one that sustains notes a little bit. So if I needed it to play a note and hold it for a while, it can do so. It's a pretty simple little preset. I like it well enough. If I ever find one that I like in the future, I might replace it. But it's pretty simple. Pretty simple little preset. So looking at Melt, for example, another thing that I had to kind of tackle was the idea of all of these being in different time signatures and different tempos and all that jazz. So for Melt, for example, what I've decided to do is obviously each of these next to them, you can see what tempo they're supposed to be played at. So before I export it or while I'm working on it, I'll basically just have to modify like the overall project's BPM to match that. So Melt's at 168 BPM, so we'll raise that up here. And then if I go into the actual piano roll for it and play just this pattern, it should sound like Melt, which, like I said, was the first one I made mostly just because this song means a lot to me. It was like the very first Vocaloid song I ever met, or the very first one I ever listened to, and what sort of introduced me to Vocaloid. And also, it was simple enough that I figured, it wouldn't be too hard to make. So to give you an idea of what these chimes sound like individually, this is the first one that I made, which was Melt. So, like I said, super short, super simple. Not supposed to be very complex because the more complex it sounds, the sort of muddier it gets. There's one in here that I'll give you an example of that sounds kind of muddy to me, in my opinion. But like I said, only goes about maybe 11 or 12 seconds up here, which I think is perfect. Um, but I'll give you an example of one that I think I might have overdone a little bit, which is Matryoshka. So this is what, 102 BPM. So we'll lower that down. Matryoshka is a little bit, like I said, muddier because it's a very complex song, and it is a song that kind of lends itself to being overdone, mostly just because it it's a very chaotic sound for those of you, or a very chaotic song for those of you who have actually heard it before. But to give you an idea of like what it kind of sounds like if you overdo it a little bit, you get something that sounds like this. Like it still sounds fine, but it's a little, in my opinion, harsh. But the reason I keep it around is mostly just because um, I mostly keep it around just because it's a song that's meant to sound a little bit harsh, and so that's why I've kept it. But I digress. So these are the ones that I've made so far. The order that I've made them in, it really just sort of depends on what I'm feeling that day. So obviously I made some of the more popular songs like Melt, When the First Love Ends, Senbon Zakura, Rolling Girl. There was a moment in time where I sort of got back into the Daughter of Evil series, so I do also have some songs that are not necessarily just, sung by Hatsune Miku. We also have some of the other main Vocaloids. So I did like the Daughter of Evil series, did Daughter of Evil, Servant of Evil, and Regret Message as like that little trio of songs. Um, but yeah, they all have their own little vibes. Some of them are a little bit more energetic and active than others. Some of them are a little bit more relaxed. But it's been a fun little project. We're going to make a couple of them here today. And one of the first things, obviously, we're going to have to do in order to do this is actually decide on which one we're going to work on. So I'm going to pull up a list here. So this is the list of ones that I've completed so far, and this is actually at the bottom of the list. So these are obviously all the ones that you saw a moment ago here on the left in FL Studio. But up here, as I scroll up, this is sort of a list of ones that I'd like to make eventually. Um, they're not sorted by anything other than just some of, like, I've just more sorted them by which ones are normally sung by Hatsune Miku, which ones are sung by the other main six Vocaloids, and then ones that are sung by other vocal synths that aren't necessarily Vocaloids, like Kasame Teto, Gumi, so on and so forth. Just because, why not? But I do have some of them that I kind of want to do more than others, which are ones that have these little asterisks next to them. Those are the ones that if I can do first, I would like to. Um, but other than that, these aren't in any particular order. They're just added as I think of them. But obviously, with as many as I've got here, we've got plenty of material. So we could knock out a couple of these, every week or so, and I'd still have plenty of material to work with. But I tried making a list that's a little mix of everything. You have some songs on here that are, classics like Goddish or Teo, or Hibana. Um, but then you've also got some newer songs, like including, Kasane Teto has been super popular lately. So you've got like Bird Brain and Machine Love, or even more popular Miku songs lately, like Mesmerizer. But also some more, what I would say, obscure songs. Like you've got like Hibikase, As You Like It. The World Hasn't Even Started Yet. So I think it'll be fun for us to kind of go through and pick a couple of these songs and uh, go through a couple of these songs and just work on adding a couple of these to our project. So that said, we're going to go ahead and get started here in just a moment. But first things first is obviously picking which one of these we're going to work on today. So I have been thinking about it, and I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that would be a little simpler to work on. Usually the ones that are less electronic and a little bit more I'm gonna say acoustic, and that might not be the right word for it. Usually tend to be easier to work on. One of them that I immediately thought of today that I thought would be a really good one, to an extent, would be Karakuri Piero, or I think it's Clockwork Jester, Clockwork Clown is the English name for it. Huge favorite song of mine, and it's also very heavily piano based, so it would be easy to make. The only difficulty with that one is that song is swung, so it's a little bit more difficult to make. Um, but shifting away from like Miku specific songs, another one that I thought that would be relatively simple is Science by Miki. Um, I think it's Miki. I might be wrong. I'm gonna kick myself later if that's not right. Because that song is quite literally just a an ostinato pattern on piano, and then the melody, and that's it. So it would be relatively simple to make. Plus, it would give me my first non main six Vocaloid song, which I think would be a neat little addition. So we might start with Science first, and then from there we might look into doing another one. Hello Worker is one that I'm a big fan of, because I realized that I do have, Miku songs. I've got some Kagamine Len and Rin songs, but I don't have any of the other main six. So having Hello Worker as one for Luca would be a neat little addition. Plus, that's one of my favorite songs of hers too. So we'll figure that out here in a second. But I think we are going to start with Science, just because, like I said, it is a little bit simpler. Uh, but yeah, so the actual process of doing these, I'm going to go ahead and on my side, I'm going to get up the actual source material pulled up, which is obviously the song itself. So we need Science. I said Miki, it's Mimi, but so I did get that wrong, and I'm kicking myself for getting that wrong. That's okay. Uh, so in addition to getting the source material up, the other thing that we kind of have to do here is actually picking what part of the song to do. I'll give an example here for a couple of them. So some of the songs, like Drop Pop Candy, which is one that I really enjoyed making, I specifically chose the chorus to make because the chorus is the most recognizable part of it. And it's the part that most people are going to recognize. So I'll play it super quickly. So this is Drop Pop Candy, and this is the chorus to it. If I can actually start from the beginning here. So it's the melody, or it's the main chorus of it, the most recognizable part. But for other ones, like Daughter of Evil, for example, I took a slightly different approach with this one because while I think the chorus is pretty recognizable, I actually think the most recognizable part of it is actually the intro to it, because that's the part that I feel when I hear it. That's the part that I immediately think, oh, this is Daughter of Evil. So for this one, I actually chose the intro instead of the chorus to do. So the intro to Daughter of Evil sounds like this. So, yeah. So looking at Science by Mimi, we're gonna have to kind of think of the same thing here in terms of what's going to work best for what's going to work best for this. So I'm going to do this super quick. Let me kill that list really quick. Let me do this. Okay. Throw this over here. Minimize that. Put it up here in the corner. So this is the music video for Science by Mimi. I won't play the whole thing just because I'm not going to have you guys listen to the whole song. But same thing here. We kind of have to decide on, are we going to do the intro? Are we going to do the chorus? Or are we going to do some other part of it? Personally, I think either of them could work, just because I think both parts of them are pretty iconic, so to speak. So we'll listen to both of them. We'll kind of decide together what we think is going to work best. But let's go ahead and give it a listen. I'll stop it there. So the intro is actually just the first verse, just a little bit more toned down. It doesn't have the drums. It's just the melody and the piano part. But then obviously as the song goes on, they start adding more parts to it. So the intro could be a good little candidate for us to work on. Let me skip to the actual chorus part of it, which I think starts right around here. The chorus is a little bit more energetic, but it is still kind of the same core, where I think the song realistically only has like the vocals, the piano, a bass, and then a drum, and that's really it. But this would be the chorus part. Let's see if I get this right. So that would be the chorus. So it will be a little bit more difficult, mostly because you have a lot of stuff like the harmony, and then you also have like the piano part that's going to be a little bit more complex than it is in the intro. So I think either of them might work. We might try, just for the sake of simplicity, we might try doing the intro first, and then maybe at another time I'll do the chorus to see which one I like more. But I digress. So I think we'll do the intro just to start. So first things first, we obviously have to figure out what tempo the song is at. So let's do this. Need a metronome. We're going to make a new pattern, which we just go to odds and ends and then do it higher. So there's a couple of different ways that I could do this, which is I could listen to the song, then pull up a metronome and then try and like match it just by ear. Or another thing that I've done before is I'll play the song and then start the metronome in FL Studio like this, and then try and match it that way. I kind of do a mixture of both, where I start listening to it get the rough neighborhood of where the tempo is, and then move from there. So let's kind of do that here. So listening from the beginning. I'm gonna say around. I'm gonna say around 178. Let's see about where that is. Pretty close. So let's do that again. Okay, so I'm a little slow. Let's try 186. I'm still just ever so slightly slow. Let's try 188. There we go. Yep, so 188. So we were pretty close in the first try. So we have 188's our tempo. So let's do piano roll. Come on, you. Cool. So we have our tempo. We have the section of the song that we're going to work on. So then from this point forward, we pretty much do two things from here. First is obviously we need to get the melody down, and then once we have the melody down, we can add the accompaniment. Luckily, with the intro being a little bit simpler, I don't have to worry about like a harmony in the melody line. So it's just a single monophonic melody line, and then the accompaniment is just the piano part. So let me listen. Let me see if I can figure out what key this is in really quick. Okay, so it's in the key of B flat. So it'd be it starts on the third, so it'd be cool. All right, so nice. Okay, so let's see here. So it's okay. I think that's going to be good because it's 3/8 notes before the first like full bar of it. Something I mentioned a second ago is there's a couple of little caveats to having to do this for the melody box specifically. One of those little caveats is that all of these, you'll notice they have like a little bit of a gap between the start and like the actual start of the song. That's for two reasons. One, because I noticed that with the melody box specifically, if you have a song that starts right as soon as the audio file starts, it takes a second for the melody box to kind of kick in. Like it fades in the song. So if you have the song start immediately at the beginning of the audio, it kind of fades in and it doesn't really sound that great. So having these just have a little bit of space at the beginning of it makes it to where the file itself starts, it quote unquote fades into silence, but then when the actual audio starts, it starts at full volume and there's no fade effect to it. Which actually works out here because, you know, if we want to keep everything lined up with the actual beat, then it starts kind of as like pickups to the second bar anyway. So that kind of actually worked out in our favor. So we have so if we have we'll stop that. So we'll do something else I've noticed with this particular patch or with this particular sample that we're using. Another choice that has to be made quite often is, do we keep notes sustained over beats like that, or do we sort of cut them off early? So I'll give you an example here. So listening to the original again, this song is very it's got a lot of staccato to it. It's very kind of punchy where there's a lot of space in between things. It's very bouncy. And so we want this space here. So if we listen to it now, there's that little bit of space right here. But if I were to try and stretch that, it's going to sustain that note and it's going to kind of sound, I'm going to almost say unnatural. It doesn't really fit with the pattern of the rest of it. Which for some songs that's what we want, but for this particular one, because of the style of the song, we probably do want to keep that there. But we have I think that's how it works. Let me double check that. actually does that. Da, 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 da. I'll have to listen to that in a second. I'm also going to cut that metronome because we don't need to hear that constantly going on. Let's listen again. Yeah. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so that repeats right there. Okay, cool. Then we have... Da, 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 da. Now my question is does it do D to C or does it do D to C sharp? I think it might do D to C sharp, but let me double check. C sharp. Cool. Yeah, so just like that, realistically, we've got the melody down for the first half of the song. And stopping here, it's about 6 seconds long, so what we'll probably do is... Let me do that really quick. We have the melody down for like the first half of the song, so what we'll probably do is just continue on to the second half of this verse, and then stop it there, and that would give us a jingle that's about 12 seconds long or so, which I think is what we're looking for. So let me do this. See if I can do this right. I'm going to start here. What I kind of want to do is I want to hear it compared to the song, how it sounds. So if I do... Let's check to see if this worked. Perfect. Neat. So we have the... Longer time. So we have the first half of that down. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Let me see here. Okay. So then let's go ahead and I could start working on the accompaniment now, but I think it would just be easier for us to go ahead and finish off the rest of this verse. So let's do... Oops. Put that there. Actually, you know what? We're going to make this easy on ourselves in the fact that this is probably going to be very similar to the other half, so we will just skedaddle that over here. Because I'm fairly sure it's just about the same. And we can always just modify this if we need to, but... Alright, so let's listen to the first two verses and see how they're different. Almost the exact same. Take that and drop you down to B flats. Cool. So the second half would go... Very nice. So if we had the whole thing from the beginning... I think that's right. I might have to listen to that second half of that verse again. Interesting. Okay. so we have... I think this second half that I might have to do a little bit differently. I actually think it looks like I think it goes like this instead. Start here. I think it does differ slightly like that. Hear that again. Cool. I think that's how it goes. I'm gonna stray from the original. I think that sounds better. Cool. So let's start there. Let's go back here. Let's see if we can compare it really quick. Perfect. Fantastic. So, luckily, that means we're basically halfway done. The other half of it obviously being the accompaniment part. But unfortunately, that's also the harder part because as decent as my listening skills are, I don't know if I'll be able to actually... I don't know if I'll actually be able to transcribe the piano part by ear, but we will give it a shot really quick. Okay, so I do hear one thing. There's sort of this little part. It's this F and this B flat that seem to sort of repeat almost on a pattern. Hang on, let me see if I can find it again. Lord, that's a complicated piano part. Okay, so we know it starts on the beat. So there's that. Might actually try here. Let's see here. Let's start with a simpler one. Let's try this really quick. So we have, I want to say it's like 3-5-1. So it'd be B flat would be the top note. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe not. Hang on. Let's try. What? I haven't figured out what chords these are. Because obviously this is the one chord, so. It almost stays the same chord. It's almost like it just changes the... It's almost like it just changes the voicing. No, it does change chords. So how do we do that? So this is probably 5. So B flat, B F. So if we do the same treatment here, we leave F there, but then we shift this down to C. This needs to be A. Don't think that's right, but we'll find out. No, it doesn't shift to 5 completely. Let me see here. Actually, I might have been wrong about this. Let's try something different. Let's do... Maybe it starts on the minor. So it'd be G minor. So let's do G, D. I'm also doing this a little bit inefficiently because normally I'd have my keyboard. Actually, I'll just do this. This works fine. Actually, I think I like that more than it starting on the one chord. So then it would probably go to 4, which would be E flat? E flat. So it'd be... Copy that. Copy that. Then it might just go to 5. Which would be F. And then to 1, which would be B flat again, right there. I don't know, let's give it a shot. Let's see if that works. You know what? I like it. I think it works. It's not exactly in line with the piano part of the original, but I think for this Melody Box project, we don't necessarily want it to be 1-to-1, because if we do make it 1-to-1, it's going to kind of run into that same problem that if we make it 1-to-1, it's going to run into that same problem that Matryoshka has, where it's a little bit too busy. And for a song that's like this, we kind of want it to be a little bit lighter. So I think we just leave it on this sort of like 1-5-1 octave pattern. But if that's the case, funny enough, because the chords chain, or because the chords just repeat, we might be able to get away with... Copy that, and then I'm going to have to do this because of the way that this is voiced, but then up to B flat. We might legitimately be done if this sounds decent. All right, let's keep listening. Except what I need to do, I need to cut that because that's going to make it sound like it's part of the melody. So I guess the other question is do we raise the melody up an octave or do we leave it where it's at? I think if we raise it up an octave, it's too high because in the original, it's not very high to begin with. Because if we raise it an octave up, it's going to sound like this. I think that's too high. I think despite the fact that we do have some parts where the accompaniment mixes in with the melody, we kind of want that. Let's listen to that ending really quick. And actually, we want to cut that off too because we want it to end at the same time. Like that. I think it's not one-to-one. I think for what we want for this project, I think that's fine. So let's do a quick little comparison. It's going to sound a little bit different, but mostly I'm not worried about it matching one-to-one. I just want to make sure it kind of captures the vibe of it. So let's see if we can compare and contrast these two. I'm very satisfied with that. I think that sounds just like what we want. Perfect. Okay, so another thing I have to do now that we're kind of done with this is first and foremost, let's rename the color. So we have science and it is 188 BPM. Cool. I'll go ahead and save this. I think I saved it. Save. Cool. Yeah, so that's that. So we have this done in terms of like how it sounds. I think it would sound great. But now we run into the other little caveat with this project, which is whenever we have a song, all of these, you'll notice, I'll go to another one really quickly because it's fine. We have that pattern saved, but all of them have this sort of ghost note at the end where I have to extend the ending of the song too by a little bit. And so I basically just have a note here with a velocity of 0, so it just extends that pattern. Because if I try to export the pattern and it ends right as the audio ends, we run into the same problem with the melody box where like it almost cuts off the ending, and we don't want that. So going back to science, go back to piano roll. We have to do the same thing here, so I'll throw in like a C, and I'll extend it to about 3 beats down to 0. So when we play it, you're not going to hear that note, but it does extend the pattern just a little bit in terms of its length. Yeah. So now if we listen to the whole thing, let's get a time on this. Let's see how long this is. Neat. Yeah, so perfect. That, I think, for what we want for this project, I think that's perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. And so there we go. So we have one song done, and it took us like, what, 30 minutes to do? So fantastic. So before we get started on another one, let's actually go ahead and look at what we have on our list here. So let's pull up you. So we have science, we can take EQ. This list I do keep in alphabetical order because why not? Cool. So we have perfect. Excellent. So now the question is what do we work on next? So we did a non-Vocaloid song. I think the rest of these non-Vocaloid songs would be pretty difficult to do. Except for maybe Bird Brain, but I'm going to be honest with you. Bird Brain was enough of an earworm for me last year that I'm kind of scared to do it. Let me see here. I wonder if we could do... Sweet Magic I'm kind of worried about because I think the accompaniment for that one's a little bit too basic. Karakuri Piero I'd like to give a shot, but I also feel like that might be a little bit too difficult to do. Stage of Sakai might be pretty easy. So here. That would be pretty simple. So Stage of Sakai is definitely one. Quantum Boogie is a little too energetic. I know Material would be really easy. That one's very simple. I know Material might actually be one that we do just because of like, in terms of mood and in terms of energy, Science is very like energetic. It's very punchy. I know Material's like very slow, very soft. We might do that. So what else we got? Monitoring will be difficult. As You Like It. Intergalactic Bound. Intergalactic Bound's probably like one of my favorite songs of all time. That's one I'd love to do, but I'm not sure about it yet. Ooh, what about Ghost City Tokyo? Curious here. Let me pull up Ghost City Tokyo. I don't need the original. Here we go. I need the original. This is by ISA. Which, fun fact, so Ghost City Tokyo is a song by ISA. And for those of you who don't know, ISA is half of Yoasobi. He's the producer side of it. So Yoasobi is the duo. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. She has like a stage name, but she's obviously the vocalist, and then ISA is the one who actually makes all the music. So this is one of his like solo songs that he made outside of Yoasobi, and it's actually pretty old. I think does it predate Yoasobi? I don't think it predates them, but it's definitely one of his older songs. Let me see here. Let's give this a quick listen. I haven't heard the Miku only version in such a long time. Okay, so it's in the key of E flat. It's very rhythmically complex in the verses, but the actual chorus itself is pretty tame in terms of rhythm. Let me see if I can find it really quick. So this is the chorus. I think that'd be relatively simple. Is that in the key of... It's in the key of C minor, I think. Yeah, it's not in the key of E flat, it's in the key of C minor. Or at least it, well, J-pop does tend to switch, so it might be in like the key of like C minor, E flat major, where it switches between the two. So let's go back to that chorus for a second and see if I can get that chorus down. That could work. The other problem that I think we're going to run into is that the chorus is a little long, where I could do half the chorus, but then it seems like it cuts off abruptly. But then if I try to do the entire chorus, we run into the problem of it being almost too long, because it starts at like here at 114, and then it goes on until like 130. So that's like a good 16 seconds, which is really long for one of these jingles. Unless I cut off the last little tag at the end of the chorus. So it'd be like... And then cut off the last little tag there, which I could do. And that would only make it 14 seconds, which isn't... I think some of these are probably about that long. Go City Tokyo could work. We could at least work on the melody, and then I could figure out the accompaniment later. Let's give it a shot. Let's do Go City. Let's do Go City Tokyo. Whole thing. Let's do this. We can get rid of our notepad browser. Cool thing. Go City Tokyo time. So we have... Cool. So let's do pattern. So same thing as before. We gotta figure out the tempo of it. So starting back at the chorus. So this is a bit more relaxed. That's definitely not going to be 180. It's probably going to be like... Let me get a listen. I'm going to say it's 108. I'm going to take an educated guess here and see if I can get this right on the first try. I'm going to say 108. I might have been a little slow. Let's do 114. All right, let's see if I was right. Nope, still too slow. So let's do 120. 120 is too slow. 124. Cool. So not as bad, or not as close as last time, but that's fine. So 122 or 124. That's not a bad tempo for that. So let's do this. General. Dun, 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 dun. So 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So this starts on the pickup to beat 3. Oh wait, I need to do this too. Hang on. I'm gonna go back to science. Copy that. Yeah. So FL Studio does this weird little thing where, like, because the last note that I put on anything was this ghost note, it copies the properties of the last note that you put. So if I click on this and then I start placing other notes, they're the same length, but they're also that same velocity. So a second ago, when I started putting down notes for Ghost City Tokyo, it was like, oh, you want this to be silent, even though I don't want it to be silent. So we just click on one of these notes, go back here, and now it copies that same velocity, which is what we want. So let's do, I don't want to do that. Here we go. I might have gotten this wrong. Hang on. Oh, that's a really weird pattern. Hang on. Okay, I see what's going on here. So it's just slightly off. So we have. So these would be dotted 8/16 patterns instead of just straight eighth notes. Make sure I get that melody right. Let's try that again. Let's do. Stop here. Cool. Copy. Okay, so we've got. Cool. So we've got like half the melody in for that. Oh, that's what you meant by panda time. uh, I think I've said this before, but like Panda Express is okay. I think like I think I would prefer like those really run down like local Chinese places that have like the faded menu. Like, like it's one of those places that like the shadier it is, like the better the food is going to be. I would prefer one of those places, but if I can't do that and I had to go to Panda Express, I am an absolute sucker for their honey walnut shrimp. Like it is a guarantee that if you take me to a Panda Express, that is absolutely going to be one of the things that I get. It is so good. But that said, you're making me hungry now. I haven't eaten dinner yet. That's okay though. So we'll probably do this one and then stop and maybe we get food or something. But yeah, so we have. And then this starts almost the same, but I don't accidentally hit my keyboard with my other keyboard. Let's copy that. Da, 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 da. Probably sounded terrible. Hang on. Da, 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 da. I think it sounds better that way. Let me double check. Nope, that's too fast. Ba, da, ba. Ba, da, ba, da. I think that's going to be too quick. Yeah, it's going to be too quick. I might also be overthinking this. Hang on. I think that's fine. Like I said, we're not looking for 100% accuracy because this is also just being played from a little box in a car. I think that'll be fun for now. So so I need 16th notes. Hang on. Okay. I think that's it. That might be the melody for the whole thing. Like I said, because I'm not going to do the tag at the end. Cool. Now the question is how does this compare to the actual melody? And then the tag, which I'm not doing. Okay, I think it's fine, but let's do the actual test, which is overlaying them. There's also little like ghost notes in there where it's like but I'm also not going to include those because with the way that this instrument is, it's just going to sound really weird if I try to include that. So I think having it just bare bones like this is the right way to go. So there's that. So then the question is, what do we do for the accompaniment? Let's see here. Back up. Let's listen again. That is the weirdest accompaniment because it's like, it's a combination of pads. It's like a combination of pads with a very simple synth bass. But then if you listen very closely, there's almost like an actual like slap bass that has like its own complicated or like its own complicated line. But it's very subtle, it's very hidden. I think I can hear it, so it's like very, very subtle in there if I can hear it. Let me turn this up a little bit so I can hear it better. I think we copy the bass here. I think we just do. I'm not going to do octaves. I think we just copy the bass for right now. Also, just now realize the chord progression for this. This is definitely Royal Road, which for ISA slash Yosobi, that does not like surprise me at all. But so we have like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put like big half notes down here of the roots of the chords. So we have A flat, B flat, G, C. But I think it goes. This is the weird part, is this part right here, because it goes like C sharp or like D flat, E flat before going back and doing the rest of it. I think that's right. Let me double check these chords. So we have. Nope. Goes back down to G here. So 4, 5, 3, 6, 4, 3, 6. Which I say 6, that's technically 1 because it's in a minor key. But good news is it just repeats. So we could just do that. So then I wonder if we could copy that bass line. It's so hard to hear. It is so subtle, but I think I think, like, with as simple as this is right here, I think it's that baseline rhythm mixed with the drums. That's like what really drives this song. So I think if all we did was copy the bass line but keep the rhythm as like the driving factor, I think even as bare bones as that would be with it just being a bass line and a melody, I think that would be fine. This is the part where we messed around a little bit. Now the other question is do I take it as is or do I make this all an octave lower? So if I did it like an octave lower, how does that sound? Or better yet, what if we just doubled it up? I kind of don't like the way that octaves sound on this instrument. Let's find out. Nah, I think octaves is too much. It brings too much attention to the bass line. We don't want that. So... That's right. One thing I do here that I think would be really cool to do is these two notes right here do my favorite like funk bass thing, which is like octave jumping. Because these two right here, instead of just doing like D flat, E flat, they do like, which I think just sounds really cool if you do it right. So, and I think plus that adds a little bit more movement there. So if we did like, the question is, how do I write this out? Like that, maybe? Yeah, we could. Let's give it a shot. So let's do that. Up to B flat, down to G, then up to C, then back down to A flat, then G, then C again, and that's where it goes. Octave, jump right there. See how that sounds. I'm on the fence. I think it sounds fine, but I'm not sure. Hmm. I think it sounds fine. Like I said, and we're also not going for authenticity. We're really just going for how well is it going to sound in a melody box in a car. So at the end of the day, I'm looking for recognizability and for does it sound decent on the instrument that it's going to be also being played through a tiny box. So if this is as bare bones as it is, I think I'm fine with that. I'll have to work on that ending. That ending's really abrupt. It's also, this pattern's really, it really messes with the second half of the rhythm, or the second half of the melody. I think we just do that. That'd be a really simple way to end it. That's fine with me. Now, I do want to try, what if I lowered this an octave? Just an octave, not doubling it. I think it's just with that particular patch, it's just too quiet when it's low. I think we leave it as that. I think that'll work. So now, question is how does it sound on top of the original? So with this being as bare bones as it is, it's not going to sound one-to-one with the original, but more than anything, when I'm playing something like this against the original, I'm mostly listening for clashing harmony, because that tells me that I got something wrong. Either like a chord is wrong or like there's a note that's wrong. But as simple as this is, it should overlay with the original fine, as long as I did everything right. So let's see if I did this right. It would also help if I didn't like completely whiff that. Let's try that again. I'm also going to turn the music down a little bit because I had to turn it up for the bass line, but now I want to hear the melody more. All right, let's do... Cool, that's working. Cool. Start there. And... I like that song. I think that's a solid little attempt at that. Like I said, not looking for perfection, not looking for something super complex, but I think for what it is, I think it's fine. So, Ghost City, Tokyo, 1:24 p.m. Save. Cool. So, that said, so we have two of these down. So we have Science at 188. So let's do this. I'm going to listen to a couple of my older ones really quickly, and I want to see if they still have like I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any of them that like stick out too much. Like Matryoshka is the one that I think kind of just sticks out, but that's also just the nature of the song. But the rest of them, they all still sort of sound the same. Like they might have like little elements from their song that make them a little different from each other, but at the end of the day, they still sound like, like this little vibe being played from a little melody box. So, like MKDR is 108. So let's listen to MKDR. So we'll listen to a couple of my old ones, then we'll listen to Science, we'll listen to a couple of my old ones, and then we'll listen to Ghost City Tokyo and see how they sound. Okay, so that's MKDR. Let's listen to Rolling Girl, because that one's faster too. That'll fit with Science. That one's also pretty simple. So then if we go to Science, Also relatively simple. Okay. So then Go City Tokyo is a little slower, so let's do Shake It. 130. Okay, and then Time Machine at 126. Then go back to Go City Tokyo, which is 124. All right, and then I gotta add the little ghost note at the end. Save that. I think Go City Tokyo is fine where it's at now. I might come back to it later and add the harmony because the chorus does have a lot of harmony to it. I might go back and do that later, but I think for now that's fine. Cool. So we have another 2 down. So at this point, how many do we have? So let's do Notepad. All right, Go City Tokyo. Let's get you off that list. You would go right here past Pop Drop Candy. Save that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We have officially hit 20 songs on this project. My God. Not bad, not bad. Awesome. I think we're going to go ahead and save that. And I'll work on actually putting it on the melody box later. But I think for now, that's pretty much what we're going to do. Because we got 2 of them down. So yeah, so like I said, they take anywhere from 30 minutes or 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how complicated they are. Science was actually relatively quick. We got through that one really quickly, but Go City Tokyo took a little bit more time, mostly because of the background. I might go back and revisit it too, but I think for where it's at now, I'm fine with it. I think there's also a couple of these other newer songs I haven't uploaded to this melody box anyway, so this will be a good time to go ahead and just bulk upload those if I haven't already. But I'm especially really satisfied with Science. I think Science really sounds good, especially with just how punchy it is and how like energetic it is. Especially compared to some of these other songs, it's very energetic but light. It's almost like Patrick Staccato, but like faster. Because Patrick Staccato is like very light, but it's slower. This is just very. It also helped if I actually had this at the right tempo. I was wondering why it was going so slow. What's it, 188? Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I think of the 2 of these, I think Science sounds really, really good. So I'm really satisfied with that. So, fantastic. So let's go ahead. We've got that saved. We can go ahead and nix that. Close that for now. Perfect. So, that said, let's go ahead and save this one last time. Cool. Then we're going to move over. So yeah, that's the Vocaloid Chimebox project. That's a little Vocaloid Chimebox project. It's something I've been working on for a little while. fun little project that I like doing. There are a couple of other like car related projects that I have on my to-do list that I would like to go ahead and work on one of these days. One of them that I'd like to work on is like a lighting project for the inside of the car. That's somewhere a little bit further in the future, but it does kind of work with my I have like an interest in working with like electronics and working with microcontrollers, and so I think the coding aspect, the electronic work or aspect of that will be really cool. Plus it'll add like a neat little a neat little ambience to my car that makes it just a little bit more unique without taking it over the top. So that'll be a fun little project to do. But yeah, this little music box project is something I've just had an absolute blast with. Um, Obviously now we've got a couple more songs to put on it, so I'll probably upload them here in a second. But yeah, it's been an absolute blast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your evening, and I will see you all next time.